Welcome back in, everybody, to Thursday's edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Aaron Schatz from FTN Fantasy. Aaron, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. Good morning. I think we're here to talk about the Eagles, not the Cardinals or Seahawks, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about everything with you, Aaron, because we want to talk about it. We want to bring you in to talk about the league as a whole, but certainly we're going to talk Eagles. Good to see you again, Aaron Schatz, Chief Analytics Officer at FTN and the creator of DVOA. So every time I've talked to you, Aaron, I start the same way, and I want you to give the quick, I think you call it the ultra short version of DVOA for those who don't know about it, and they should know about it.
Yes. So what we do is we judge the success of every play based on the down and distance, and then compare that to a league average baseline that is adjusted for situation and opponent. And that is how we get DVOA. And it's tweaked to try to be as predictive as possible. We have the stats going back 45 years, and we can do historical research with it, and we can look at the future season with it.
And this is the 20th anniversary. People remember rebranding. Used to be Football Outsiders. Now it's FTN. But the same great information from Aaron. Our buddy Mike Tenier, who's always on the show, we'll give him a shout out as well, as he did the Eagles preview. We'll start with the Eagles with you, Aaron, but I want you, there's a lot of hype around this team locally. I think everybody looks at them as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Maybe they should pump the brakes, at least from the numbers and what you guys are looking at. How do you look at the Eagles, not only in relationship to the NFC East, but the conference as a whole?
Yeah, it's always weird to go out and promote my preseason book when we're not as high on the team as the fans are. So we're like, come read our book where we're pessimistic about your team. That's great.
Fair point.
But we are a little bit pessimistic. Now, one thing that I've talked about a lot when I've been on podcasts for teams that did really well in the second half of last year, like Chicago, is that second half performance does not tend to roll over to the following year. As much as that seems counterintuitive, the best way to predict how a team will do this year is to look at how they played over the entire season last year, not just the second half of the year. So we can't say, oh, the Eagles collapsed in the second half of the year, so they're going to be terrible this year. The problem is the collapse in the second half of the year dragged their numbers for the whole year down. So they come out as like 14th in DVOA last season. And I don't really see a lot of reasons to believe that they're going to be better than that this year. And it's not that I don't like the moves that they've made. I think they made the right moves that they could make. But, you know, for example, when you have new coordinators with new systems, all else being equal, you tend to take a little bit of a step back while people learn the new systems. We wrote about this very specifically last year with Fangio in Miami. That Fangio does not have a history of turning defenses around immediately. It usually takes a year or two for his scheme to really come into place. I like the defensive, taking defensive players high in the draft tends to result in a good performance quicker than taking offensive players high in the draft. But I think that fans of the Eagles may be underplaying the importance of Jason Kelce, and that loss is a big one for the offensive line. So when you put it all together, what we end up with is a team that should be a little bit above average. And I think that the high end of the range of possibilities is a Super Bowl contender, but that it's more likely that they're a wild card contender.
How much do the rosters go into it, Aaron? I mean, you know, people talk about the Eagles roster, especially on offense. I mean, defense, you know, they have their litany of problems, but on offense, they got Saquon, they have AJ, they have all these guys, and people across the league, I think that's part of the reason they're rated so highly, you know, especially locally, is that they feel so great about all the great players. How much do the great players impact, you know, how you project what a team's going to be in the future year?
I mean, we start with performance, right, over the last 3 years, mostly last year. And then we look at how the roster has changed from year to year, okay? And we try to account for the players that have come in and out. That being said, running back additions rarely move the needle. I know analytics people sound like a broken record. I just used like 2 record metaphors in the same sentence. But that's what you get. I'm an ex-disc jockey. Saquon is good. I don't know if at this point in his career, Saquon Barkley is one of the few running backs who really makes a difference. If he is, certainly it would be as a receiver. And the holes that the offensive line should make for him should give him great stats. But they had that last year. They had big holes from the offensive line last year. So I don't know how much of an upgrade Barkley really is. And that's the guy that they're hanging their hat on for the offense to improve this year, because otherwise it's mostly the same offense as last year, except no Kelsey and yay, Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell's never really done anything. So there's really not a yay.
No. And I think it's interesting because that brings the Giants into the discussion. And I don't know if you've been following Hard Knocks, Aaron, but that's a big story here in Philadelphia. Saquon leaving the Giants, coming to the Eagles. And this is what I love about DVOA is the fact that you guys kind of explain, if people want to take the time to learn, that all situations are not created equally. I think it was a no-brainer for the New York Giants to move on from Saquon. For the Eagles, maybe it works because it's a luxury. It's an added addition. You already have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. You already have this explosive offense. They're better prepared to utilize a Saquon Barkley. So I bring that into, expand it to the NFC East. We know the history of this division. Teams don't win it 2 years in a row. It's been a long time. Dallas, that's bad news for Dallas. They haven't had a great offseason. The Giants, John Mara's more of a fan, it seems. He's losing sleep because they never won a damn game with Saquon Barkley, and he's losing sleep. Washington, Jaden Daniels, a lot of uncertainty. How do you project that? How do you get all that into a sort of a pile and come out looking good?
I think this is the year that breaks the string of teams winning the division twice in a row.
Nice.
I think that people want to slag on Dallas a little bit because they have failed in the playoffs, but winning in the regular season, is winning in the regular season. And they've shown they can do that. They've won 12 games for 3 straight years. And there's no reason to believe their team's going to be really much worse this year than it's been the last 3 years. So I expect them to win a lot of games again. I mean, there's lots to argue about with Dallas. Like, why are they not signing their best player for the future? But that doesn't change the fact that that is a good team for this year's regular season. Washington, you're right, lots of uncertainty. You cannot expect a rookie quarterback to be good. They might be really bad. The fact is, if you look at all the teams with rookie quarterbacks plus Indianapolis, which effectively has a rookie quarterback with Anthony Richardson, one of those teams at least is going to really surprise people and be really good. But we have no idea which of those teams it is. It might be Washington. Washington also might be 2-15. You just don't know with a rookie quarterback. And the Giants, I think, are the worst team in the league because they have no hope. All the other teams at the bottom of our projections have hope, right? Chicago, if Caleb Williams is good, we're totally wrong.
Yeah.
Washington, if Jaden Daniels is good, we're totally wrong. Arizona, if Kyler Murray can find what he had 2 years ago before his injuries, we're wrong about them. I don't see the situation in which the Giants suddenly become a 10-win team and win this division. They just do not have the talent to do that.
Yeah. The NFC as a whole, legitimate Super Bowl contenders that you guys are projecting, the teams that have a real shot if the stars align to be in that conversation. Where's that? What's that group and where's that cutoff point?
I mean, I don't tend to believe in a cutoff point. I tend to believe that every team has a shot at the Super Bowl. It's just a very, it's a gradual decline in abilities. Because the way I talk about it is, I remember 1999. And when Trent Green got hurt, people thought the Rams were the worst team.
Yeah, Dick Vermeil was crying. Let's be honest.
Everybody's got a shot, right?
Yeah.
That being said, San Francisco is the best team in our projections. And because the AFC is harder than the NFC, San Francisco, that gives them an easier road into the Super Bowl than Baltimore, Kansas City has. I think Detroit is a legit contender. I cannot explain Dallas's thing in the playoffs, but I think that they're a legit contender if they can ever solve that. I think the Rams could definitely do it. I think the Seahawks are an above-average team, but it's hard to see them likely getting to a Super Bowl. And the team that I'm high on that no one else is New Orleans, but that's not because they're Super Bowl contenders. It's because they're an average team with a really easy schedule. They're not. They look like the team that's going to win the NFC South and lose in the first round. So, I mean,
now the one team I would add, because this is the team I'm high on, and I think is the best team in the NFC, Detroit. I thought they were the best team.
Detroit.
Best team in the NFC last year, to be honest. They should have won. They should have beat San Francisco. They got a little bit too aggressive, but that's how they got there. And I think everybody looks at that and says, Dan Campbell's an idiot. No, he isn't. I mean, if they make one play, they're going to the Super Bowl.
Guys were open on those fourth downs. And Reynolds dropped the ball. On
Exactly. So that to me is the team. I look at that team and I go, they got something cooking there.
I thought I mentioned Detroit. We have Detroit as the second best team in the NFC.
Yeah.
And I should mention Green Bay. Green Bay also has a shot, I think.
Yeah.
But we have Detroit as the second best team in the NFC. I think their defense is going to be a little bit better this year. They have a very good offense. Yes, I'm high on Detroit.
Yeah.
Where are the Eagles, Aaron, in this? I mean, I know you said you were a little bit pessimistic, and it's tough talking to an Eagles base when you, telling them to come read it when you're not high on the team. But you just laid out a bunch of teams in the NFC. Where do you have the Eagles projecting coming into the year?
We have the Eagles project with an average of 8.8 wins, which ranks them 16th in the league and 8th in the NFC.
Dead smack mediocre, dead in the middle.
A little bit better than mediocre,
a
little bit better than average. And again, I mean, there's upside here. I mean, we could be wrong. If you see, the thing is, if you look at the parts of the roster, it feels like they're better than that.
Yeah.
But when you look at the performance of the sum of the parts, especially last year's performance, they're like the 14th or 15th best team in the league. That's what they were last year. They were not as good as their record when they started 9-1, and then they completely collapsed. And I can't, the defense should be a little bit better this year. And defense is harder to predict than offense, and defenses turn things around without anybody expecting it, surprisingly. But it's not likely that the defense turns things around, which means the defense is going to drag the offense down again.
Yeah, one thing Mike noted in his Eagles preview that I took notice of is the history is not great when you have two new coordinators. And it happened to the Eagles last year, but it was a disaster, to be honest. Brian Johnson, first-time NFL coordinator. Sean decided to make it the season before he was demoted. This year, you got two new coordinators again, which is bad, but at least they're veteran coordinators, and they've done it before. Does that shift things a little bit? I know you mentioned something about Fangio. Typically, it takes him a while, but the Eagles have been running his scheme. It's been his guys. Gannon copied the scheme. Sean Desai's a direct disciple.
Yeah, that might be a reason for it to turn around a little faster, I think. Yeah. But, when you change, have both coordinators change, it shows a couple of things. It's often a brain drain. I don't think that's the case here. It shows that things are a little bit messy. It shows that things with the team are a little bit messy. I think that is the case here. And then again, it takes usually new coordinators, all else being equal. I mean, usually when a team has new coordinators, they get better because they were really bad the previous year. If you control for that, then new coordinators usually see things a little bit worse because it takes time to learn the schemes.
Yeah. Aaron, I might be putting you on the spot here in terms of, just going off your memory, but how much did the 2023 Eagles, based on DVOA and the metrics you're using, differ from the 2022 Eagles, which marched their way to the Super Bowl and basically lost in the last couple minutes of the game? I mean, the rosters weren't that different from 22 to 23, drastically different results. Just curious how different it looked, in those 2 years, and if that might be a predictor of what's to come as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have a rebound effect, and the defense, one reason to believe the defense will be better is the rebound effect. The offense went from 3rd in DVOA to 10th. Small difference. Really wasn't that big a difference, honestly. The defense went from 3rd to 29th.
Yeah.
That was the difference.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, the special teams went to number 1, but special teams are very inconsistent. And nobody knows this year. Like, special teams this year is a big black box.
Yeah.
No one knows how the new kickoff is going to be.
Yeah.
But it was defense. Defense collapsed last year. Like, could the offense get back to what they did 2 years ago? Yeah. I mean, I feel like with Kelsey gone, that I feel like people are just sort of poo-pooing that as a big loss. I especially don't know how much Kelsey meant to the brotherly shove. He's right in the middle of that thing, right? Like that. He could be a big part of the reason why the Eagles are so much more successful with that play than everyone else.
Yeah.
And now he's gone.
Oh, he's a big part of it. He stole half a yard with his manipulation of the football. I always joke about Jason. I don't know if you watch an Eagles game, Aaron, but he would steal, like, I'm exaggerating, but he'd steal like 10 inches. He'd move the ball.
Framing. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. A good baseball analogy. And he would. And he had the reputation. I think, that's something that's, it's not going to be able to show up in any statistics. But when you have that reputation, the veteran guy, 6-time All-Pro, going to be in the Hall of Fame, they let you get away with something, maybe more than a younger player. So I think you're on to something. But I got to tell you, Aaron, the Eagles with the quarterback sneak, they were great before the tush push. Carson Wentz was great at it when he was here.
Yeah, but he also had Kelsey.
Yes,
Yeah, right.
that's what I'm saying.
Kelsey's
a big part of it, is what I was trying to get to. So I think you're on to something there. While we have you, I want to look at the AFC. Kansas City obviously has to be a significant contender. A lot of change in Baltimore, though. I thought they were the best team throughout the regular season in the AFC. So I want to get your thoughts on them. And then the team that is the young up-and-coming team, you mentioned rookie quarterbacks. They might be good. C.J. Stroud. I mean, they turned that around. Right there. Yeah, they turned that around so quickly. So how high are you guys on the Houston Texans taking that next step as well?
Baltimore, to talk about first, Baltimore was record-setting in our stats during the regular season.
They were unbelievable.
Even with the players that they've lost, I think they have to be considered the top team in the AFC going into this year, with Kansas City right behind them. I think, even with the offensive line losses, I'm not as worried about some of their defensive losses. I mean, Geno Stone was like the 3rd safety, and Patrick Queen had not been that great in previous seasons. I'm worried about McDonald. I'm more worried about the loss of the coordinator on defense than I am about
Anthony Weaver. They lost a bunch of coaches too. Anthony Weaver is now the defensive coordinator in Miami. Denard Wilson, who was here, is now the defensive coordinator in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So they got gutted. John Harbaugh got gutted.
They were so ahead of the rest of the AFC in the regular season that I still have them very high projected. But as far as Houston goes, I'm a big believer. I'm definitely a believer in Houston. Stroud was so good last year that there's a good possibility he won't actually improve in his second year because he already was so good. But I mean, they won the lottery, man. He's really good. And they've got good defensive players, and I like the moves they make. And if Diggs is healthy, unlike the second half of last year, that's a good move to bring in for their wide receivers. And the AFC is very strong. 8 of our top 12 projected teams are in the AFC. which means one of those teams has to miss the playoffs, even if they all meet expectations.
Yeah, it is. And I think it starts with the quarterbacks. I mean, the AFC is just deeper at quarterback. I mean, they just.
And then the AFC also has the 3 highest projected defenses in my numbers, right? Cleveland, the Jets,
Tim Schwartz. Yeah. Our old buddy, Tim Schwartz. Yeah.
Whose offense will be terrible, so they're not actually going to be contenders. But
yeah, I kind of feel bad for
Cleveland has a reasonable offense. So,
it's interesting you went there with the Patriots because I think, I'm with you with Drake May. I feel kind of sorry for him because situation matters so much for a young quarterback. But if you look at the young quarterbacks, I mean, Chicago on paper, they have DJ Moore and they drafted another potential difference maker and they're doing everything. But boy, I got a tough time. I mean, they have not been able to develop quarterbacks. You saw what they did to Justin Fields. A little bit concerned there. The one guy who and it's ironic because I don't know why he was a first round pick. He barely played at Michigan. And when he did play, they would often not let him throw the ball. And all of a sudden, he's a top tier pick. But then I look at JJ McCarthy, and he's got Justin Jefferson. He's got Jordan Addison if he stops doing stupid stuff in his car. If TJ Hawkinson is back. Aaron Jones, who I think is one of the more underrated backs, even though he's getting a little bit older. He had a great playoff run. He single-handedly beat the Cowboys in the playoffs. He's got the best situation. So I'm kind of torn. I think JJ McCarthy's got this great situation. Poor Drake May, who I think could be a good player, has got nothing.
Well, that's why Drake May not play very much this year. They're probably going to use Jacoby Brissett as the quarterback, certainly to start the season. I think that the Patriots are building something with wide receivers. They need to get a number 1. I don't know if Jalen Polk is that guy. They have no left tackle, and you don't want Drake May to play behind a bad offensive line and get bad habits like David Carr or something. So I wouldn't expect
a
lot of Drake May this year. But I don't think he's completely left in the lurch. I think we just don't know. We don't know Alex Van Pelt developing quarterbacks. We just don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
Aaron, let me play devil's advocate with you here. And as a guy who has a career in analytics, I'm sure you deal with this question a lot. How much do you factor, if at all, the non-number stuff into these type of evaluations where there's a human element? There's some of the things that people talk about where there's a knock on analytics out there who, the people that don't love it. How much is that a factor or is it not a factor at all?
Well, we don't incorporate things that aren't in the numbers in our numbers because they're the numbers. But that's why we don't publish a book that's nothing but tables of numbers. We put words next to them because we watch a lot of film and we want to talk about the intangibles. And I mean, a good example of this is the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Mike Tomlin, the greatness of Mike Tomlin is in intangible things.
Yeah.
Within his locker room management and his ability to incentivize players.
Right.
And that exists, but we can't incorporate it in our numbers. And so we write about it separate from our numbers.
Yeah. That makes sense. At Schatz NFL, make sure you follow Aaron on X or Twitter, if you like to call it that. Still 20th anniversary, by the way, of the now FTN Football Almanac. You know it as Football Outsiders for years and years. Does a tremendous job. Love when we can get them. You should go buy this. If you want to be a smarter football fan, FTNfantasy.com. You can get it there. You can get it digital. I think the hard copies are coming out soon.
Hard copy is available now at Amazon.
It is available now. And that's you should get this thing in a hard copy because you got to sit and peruse it and read it. And you're a smarter football fan. So thanks for stopping by, Aaron. Appreciate it. Always when I get to talk to you. One of the smartest guys in football. And it's can't come more highly recommended, even if you're not as high on the Philadelphia Eagles, as you should be, according.
Well, thank you. And, hopefully you can have me on at midseason and tell me why I was so
There
wrong.
we go.
Because
There
they're
we go.
7-2 or something.
And we are going to take you up on that, Aaron.
We absolutely will.
Of course, they were 10-1 last year. That didn't mean anything. So
we might want to wait till like week
not going to
14
get
or 15.
people excited, Aaron. To be honest, they're going to be disappointed with 7-2. But appreciate it. Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, man. There's Aaron Schatz joining us on Birds 365. Good stuff there. A little bit of a different look than we're used to. Deep in the analytics, some good stuff there. Some good things to take. Johnny Mac, how much do you factor that stuff in? Like, you're not you view analytics, you appreciate them, you study them, you're aware of them, and then you're also a reporter where you see the inside, you see the locker room, you see the players, the talent, all of the other things. How much do you factor in like that stuff when you hear Aaron said they're going to win 8.5 games or whatever his projection was based on the numbers versus,
Yeah, well, I say the same thing with PFF, and I think, people see me and they see I'm older, and they, typically older people aren't open to newer ideas. I pride myself on being open to newer ideas, and I always say for the people that criticize PFF, and they like it when, as I said, when AJ Brown's got a great grade, or Lane or Jordan Mailata or Landon Dickerson, et cetera. They don't like it when Devin, and they're stupid when they give Devin White a bad grade. No, it's just, fandom showing through. In the case of Aaron, what they do better and DVOA does better than anybody else is what I was talking about with Saquon Barkley. All situations are not created equal.
Yeah.
So I brought up that Hard Knocks because that's been a theme throughout the season. Like Joe Shane was on that show saying, we can't pay, we can't pay a $13 million running back with a $40 million quarterback. And everybody jumped on social media. So the Eagles are paying them with a $50 million quarterback. The Eagles are not in the same situation as the New York Giants. All situations are not created equally. Two situations are not created equally. The New Orleans Saints, the Los Angeles Rams, the Kansas City Chiefs, enter any team you want. They all are different situations than the Philadelphia Eagles. So these stupid comps don't make sense. And what DVOA does better than anybody else is they create sort of this baseline for each and every play and understand the situation is different. So, as Aaron will describe it, if I gave him the opportunity, he would say, 5 yards on 3rd and 5 is a hell of a lot important than 5 yards on 3rd and 15. A lot more meaningful.
That stuff makes complete sense to me. Where 5 yards is obviously more valuable on 3rd and 4 than 3rd and 15.
They measure each play individually and give it that baseline, and then you go up or you go down. And that's why generally it's been the best measure of team success and why so many people default to it and so many people use it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely in the weeds type of analytics. It's definitely, I don't want to use the word nerdy type, but it's math. I mean, it's
nerd. It's nerdy.
Yeah, it's nerd. I mean, it's deep in the analytics. It's not, I'm not saying there's not a place for it, but I do think there needs to be a little bit of a balance where, I get what he's saying about the Cowboys and the Eagles, but I don't view the Eagles as an 8.5 win team. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just being a fan, but
no, and remember, it's just a projection. It's a projection based model. So no, I have the Eagles winning 11 games. But I do think the room is, when we do that Jody Mack exercise of going up or going down, I went down. I think, there's plenty of avenues for the Eagles to hit their ceiling. There's plenty of avenues for them to go in a different direction, unfortunately, as well. And he mentioned, that's another thing they do well is they put words next to the charts. And, our buddy Mike Tanier, who's on the show a lot, did the Eagles part of it. And, he explained some of these things about the history of 2 coordinators, which you saw in living color. And as even with a guy with a reputation, this is a very nomadic profession. So you can follow Vic Fangio from San Francisco to Chicago to Denver to Miami to Philadelphia. And, his history is that first year, there's some ramp up. And then when he has his good defense, second, third year, it gets better and better. So there's that history as well. So they have the words and they point out certain things. And there's a lot of positive as well. So it's not all negative. They're very high on the rookie picks. Saquon is interesting to me because I don't, and this is where I criticize Howie, and they kind of agree with me in the fact that even if you turn, like, I find it hilarious that people think I hate Saquon Barkley, yet I expect more out of him than the Xander Krauses and the Bill Colarulos of the world. Like, I think he's going to have a better year than you guys. And so the impact is what I've been talking about. From to use your guys' projections, he's not going to be much better than DeAndre Swift or Miles Sanders, which is kind of where I was at the beginning of this.
Right.
Be that much better than those guys. Now, as the final piece of the puzzle, it might make some sense where it didn't make sense with the New York Giants. The stuff where I would say there's some holes, like Dallas. Now, look, and you talked about the human element a little bit, Xander. I think people forget, yes, Dallas, I don't agree with their business acumen at all. And their, Jerry Jones's willingness to pay a tax for being reactive instead of proactive. But they still have Dak Prescott. They still have Micah Parsons. They still have CeeDee Lamb. They're still going to be on the field for them. So
they got a ton of good players. They got the cornerbacks too. I mean, you're right. Dallas definitely still has a lot of good players.
The issue becomes, does that weigh on them? Does that weigh on Dak Prescott because he doesn't have a new deal? Does that weigh on CeeDee Lamb? Does that weigh on Micah Parsons? That's the human element nobody can measure. So that part is real. And certainly being around it, you saw last year with the Eagles collapse. Nobody could have predicted that. That quote of the most miserable 10-1 team ever was, in hindsight, very apropos. Like the expectations wore on that team. It literally wore on them to the point where they collapsed under it. And that's
most miserable 10-1 team you ever saw in your life.
And that's the human element we're talking about. You can't measure that.
Yeah, that's where I struggle with the analytics, to be honest. Like, I see the place for them, but just like you said,
they're valuable as long as you use them correctly.
Right, in context. I mean, look, that's where I'm just like, last year, you would have never been able to DVOA your way into the Eagles are going to collapse at the end of the year. Same year when we won the Super Bowl. I mean, nobody would have ever said, based on any metric ever, that Nick Foles would go on to win the Super Bowl. I think sometimes the human element, or just, the nature of the game, it takes over, and it doesn't care about analytics and numbers and data. I get it. It's a good
well, yeah,
thing to look
and that's
at,
why you have to know it. I always bring
you
see these stupid if you watch games live, now you have these projections, like if the Phillies are ahead in the ninth inning, there's a 99.4% they're going to win the game, and then all of a sudden somebody hits a grand slam and it's blown up. but it doesn't change the fact that the numbers say 99% of the time you're going to win that game. That's what they're saying. Not that there can't be an outlier.
Right.
That's what a projection model is. And as long as you know what it is, it's very, very valuable.
Yeah.
You know, when Joe Banner, the Eagles were one of the first team to sort of embrace analytics. And I remember Joe saying, all right, you know, we got the data, you know, tell me how to evaluate the data. Give me some value. In other words, you want it to be actionable. Like, I don't care. You can throw the numbers at me, but it's got to be actionable to help you gain an advantage over somebody else. And that's where the Eagles have been ahead of the curve when it comes to analytics. Everybody's got the same numbers. Now, find something in those numbers that makes me better than the opponent because I can act on it.
Yeah, it's information. It's context and information. How you use it is up to you. And I certainly agree with that. What I will say, great respect to Aaron Schatz. I thought he did a great job today. I think he does great work over at FTN. I would encourage everybody to go and buy the Almanac just for what Johnny Mack is saying. It's more it's more information. It makes you a smarter fan. Whether you agree with everything or not is fine. I'm not going to sit here and say I think the Eagles are going to win 8 games because that's what the DVOA says. I would never.
8.8. Let's be fair, and that's just the medium. And I agree. They're going to be above that. But there's plenty of good numbers in there that allow you to understand a little bit. I mentioned yesterday I got it from those guys because they were nice enough to send me the manual and the fact that, I didn't know the Eagles. I know the Eagles didn't throw it over the middle of the field. I didn't know they were 32nd, dead last. And I sure as hell didn't know they were really successful when they did it. Which 4th or 5th in the league. That's the kind of stuff that they bring to the table. Yeah, it's a really, like, if you're getting a preview NFL magazine or book, and this is a book, it's like 450 pages. This is the one to get, is my recommendation.
There you go, Johnny Mac, stamp of approval. Let's go to our super chat from James Carver. You know Johnny Mac how it is. Not everybody in our chat box likes to hear from a numbers guy that we're going to win 8.5 ball games this year, which I understand. I really do. James Carver says $10. James, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Making metrics beyond one tool and toolbox is akin to when they used modeling to construct number one song based on all hits characters, and it ended up being complete noise that flopped.
Yeah, well, again, and you didn't hear Aaron say the Eagles are going to win 8.8 games. One reason is because they can't win 8.8 games.
Well, he did say that he thinks the Cowboys are going to win the NFC.
Yes, he did. And the Cowboys, look, I mean, we're an Eagles show. They don't like the Cowboys. The Cowboys have been really freaking good. Nobody paid attention. As Aaron pointed out, they won, double-digit games. Season after season after season.
They're regular season champions. That's the Cowboys' MO in the 21st century. Yeah.
That's what you're talking about when you're winning the NFC East. You're talking about the regular season.
Yeah, no, I know. You're right. I'm not saying you're wrong.
But the history is a history, and nobody's gone back to back in this division. So, and I don't think the Giants are coming up. I agree with Aaron. That might be the worst team in football. I do have some hope for Washington, but there's so much uncertainty with Jaden Daniels. So it's Eagles or Cowboys, and history will tell you it's the Eagles' turn.
Yep, let's get to our commercial break, Johnny Mac. We still have about 18 minutes to go, 17 minutes to go until we get Zach Berman from PHLY, from all PHLY. Good stuff from Zach. He's always been one of my favorite Eagles beat reporters to follow, to read, and to see cover the team. So excited to talk to him. It's our first time talking to him in a while here on Birds 365. So we'll do that at 9:20. coming up out of the break, I want to ask you one thing about Kellen Moore you wrote about, but I also want to finish up our cornerback talk. I think there was a couple questions out there that we got to hit on, a couple players I want to hit on specifically that we'll talk about. So we'll do all that next on Birds 365. If you guys are in the chat, appreciate it. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Stay tuned. Zach Berman coming up in hour 2, and then a question on Kellen Moore and the cornerbacks coming up next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.